My boyfriend convinced me to move to a new city for his dream job, then dumped me 2 weeks after we arrived. He said, "This is my new life. You are just the luggage." I just looked around the empty apartment I had just finished unpacking. Now he calls me crying every day, because his dream job was just rescinded after I anonymously sent his new boss the full, unedited chat history where he bragged about lying on his resume. The decision to uproot my entire life was not one I made lightly. For 3 years, Mark and I had built a comfortable existence. We had our favorite coffee shop, our Sunday routine of farmers markets and lazy afternoons, and a circle of friends we had known since college. I had a stable job as a graphic designer, a close relationship with my family, and a life that felt, for the most part, settled. But Mark was always chasing the next big thing. He was ambitious, charming, and had a way of painting the future in such vibrant colors that you could not help but want to be in the picture with him. So when he got the offer from Innovate Dynamics, a hot new tech firm in Austin, it was all he could talk about. It was not just a job. It was, in his words, the launching pad. He would talk for hours about the corner office he would eventually have, the company car, the networking events with industry titans. He sold me a dream of a life that was bigger, brighter, and more exciting than the one we had. "Imagine it, Chloe," he would say, his eyes gleaming. "Weekends on the lake, a beautiful modern apartment, a whole new city to explore together. This is our chance to build a real future." My own career was flexible. I could work remotely, so the logistics were not impossible. Still, the thought of leaving everything I knew behind filled me with a quiet dread. I loved my city, my friends, my little apartment with the perfect morning light. When I voiced my concerns, Mark was an expert at soothing them. He would call me his partner, his rock, the one person he could not do this without. He made me feel like his success was our success, that his dream was our shared destination. Looking back, I see how skillfully he framed it, making my sacrifice feel like a joint investment. So I said yes. I agreed to pack up my life, to leave my support system behind, and to move 1,000 miles away for his dream. The 2 months leading up to the move were a storm of cardboard boxes and logistics. I was the one who spent hours on the phone with moving companies, the one who meticulously labeled every box, the one who handled the deposits and the paperwork for our new apartment. Mark was, of course, swamped with preparing for his new role. He had endless preliminary calls and networking Zooms that kept him conveniently unavailable for the heavy lifting. I would spend all day packing up our memories, while he would come home, glance at the boxes, and say something like, "Wow, you are a machine, babe. I could not do this without you." He was right about that. He literally could not have done it without me. We found a beautiful and expensive 2-bedroom apartment downtown. Mark insisted on it, saying we needed a place that reflected his new corporate status. I had reservations about the cost, but he brushed them aside, talking about his massive signing bonus and the salary that would make the rent a non-issue. I used a significant portion of my own savings to cover the security deposit and first month's rent, an investment, he called it, that he would pay back as soon as his first paycheck cleared. The day we arrived in Austin was hot and exhausting. The moving truck was late, and we spent hours sitting on the floor of our empty apartment, the echo of our voices bouncing off the bare walls. For a moment, it felt real and exciting. We were finally there. But the feeling quickly faded. Over the next 2 weeks, the reality of our new life began to set in, and it was not the picture Mark had painted. Unpacking became my full-time job. I was determined to turn this empty white box into a home. I assembled furniture until my hands were raw, arranged our belongings, and spent hours searching for the perfect rug to tie the living room together. Mark, on the other hand, was a ghost. He started his new job that first Monday and immediately fell into a routine that barely included me. He would leave before I woke up and come home late, smelling of fancy cocktails and telling me about the amazing connections he was making at after-work drinks. When I would try to talk to him about my day, about how lonely it was in a city where I knew no one, he would seem distracted, tapping away on his phone. "You just need to give it time, Chloe," he would say. Not looking up. Maybe find a hobby or something. His support, once a flood of reassurance, had slowed to a trickle. I told myself it was just the stress of the new job. I told myself he was busy building our future. I told myself to be patient. The end came exactly 2 weeks after we arrived. It was a Thursday afternoon. I had finally finished. The last box was broken down. The last picture was hung on the wall. The apartment looked beautiful, like a page out of a magazine. I had even bought a bottle of champagne to celebrate, to mark the moment we could finally start living in the dream we had moved for. Mark came home around 7. He walked in, dropped his briefcase by the door, and looked around the living room. I was standing by the kitchen counter, smiling, waiting for him to notice the effort, to see the home I had built for us. He surveyed the room with a cool, detached expression, his eyes scanning over the new rug, the perfectly arranged bookshelves, the framed photos of us on the mantelpiece. He finally looked at me, his face unreadable. "It looks good," he said, his voice flat. "I thought we could celebrate," I said, holding up the bottle of champagne. "We are finally all moved in." He did not smile, he just nodded slowly and walked over to the couch, but he did not sit down. He stood there for a moment, looking at a picture of us from a vacation we took last year. Then he turned to me, and the man I had loved for 3 years was gone. In his place was a stranger. "I am glad you are done," he said. "It makes this easier." My smile faltered. "Makes what easier?" He took a deep breath, the kind of performative sigh someone does when they are about to deliver bad news they are not sorry about. "This is not working, Chloe. I have been thinking about it for a while. This move, this new job. It is a fresh start for me. A new life." I just stared at him, confused. "Our new life," I corrected him gently. "You said this was for us." That is when he delivered the line, the one that would echo in my head for weeks. He gave a small, cruel smirk. "No, this is my new life," he said, his voice devoid of any emotion. "You were just the luggage." The word hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Luggage. Something you drag along, something you need for the journey but not the destination. All the packing, the planning, the money, the sacrifice. I was just a convenience. I felt the blood drain from my face. I could not speak. He continued, the words coming out in a cold, rehearsed rush. He told me he had met someone else, a woman named Jessica from his new office. He said they had a real connection, and that he realized he had been settling with me. He said he needed my help with the move because he could not handle the logistics on his own. But he never intended for me to be a permanent part of his Austin life. He finished his speech, picked up his briefcase, and walked to the door. "My name is the only one on the lease," he said. A fact that was true, something he had insisted on for simplicity. "I will give you a week to pack your things and get out. I will be staying with Jessica until then." And then he left. The door clicked shut, leaving me alone in the beautiful, perfectly decorated apartment that suddenly felt like a tomb. I looked around at the life I had just finished unpacking, and I finally understood. I was not home. I was just in the lost and found. The first 24 hours were a blur of shock and a deep, hollow pain. I wandered through the apartment, touching the furniture I had assembled, looking at the photos of a man I no longer knew. I was completely alone in a city of strangers, 1,000 miles from anyone who cared about me. The silence in the apartment was deafening. Every corner of it was a monument to my own stupidity. I finally called my best friend, Sarah, back home. The moment I heard her voice, I broke down, sobbing so hard I could barely get the words out. She listened patiently, her voice a lifeline in the storm of my grief. She cursed Mark with a creativity that would have been funny under any other circumstances. She offered to fly down immediately, to help me pack, to burn the apartment to the ground if necessary. It was during that call that the first seed of an idea was planted. As I was explaining how perfect his new job was, how it was the foundation of his whole betrayal, Sarah went quiet for a moment. "Chloe," she said slowly. "Do you remember all those times he talked about his resume, how he was always bragging about how he finessed it?" I did remember. Mark had always been proud of his ability to spin his accomplishments. He called it strategic positioning. He would boast about how he had stretched the truth on his qualifications, how he had taken credit for team projects, how he had listed skills he had only read about in an article once. At the time, I had brushed it off as him just being arrogant, puffing out his chest. I never thought it was outright, verifiable lying. He told me he got some special certification in project management last year, I said, thinking back. He said the company paid for it. Ask my brother if that is true, Sarah said. Her brother Kevin had worked at the same company as Mark for a year. I am pretty sure Kevin told me Mark failed the exam twice and then gave up. After we hung up, Sarah's words kept replaying in my mind. Finessed. It was a soft word for something ugly. It was a word for lying. A cold, hard anger began to burn through the fog of my sadness. He had not just thrown me away. He had built his entire new life on a foundation of deceit. That evening, I was packing a box of his things, clothes he had left behind in his hurry to start his new life, when I saw his personal laptop sitting on the desk in the spare bedroom, the one I had set up as our home office. He had been so arrogant, so sure of himself, that he had not even bothered to take it. He probably figured I was too heartbroken to be anything but a puddle on the floor. He was wrong. I opened it. It was not even password protected. And there, open in his browser, was his personal email and his chat messenger. He had not even logged out. His entire digital life was laid bare. My hands were shaking as I clicked on the chat history with his best friend Alex. The conversation went back months. What I found was worse than I could have imagined. It was not just a few embellished skills. It was a mountain of lies. I scrolled up, my heart pounding with a furious rhythm. There it was, in black and white. A conversation from 3 months ago. Just submitted the application for the Innovate job. The Austin one? Thought you needed that PMP certification for it. I do, and according to my resume, I have it. You actually lied about it? Dude, they will check. Nah, they never do. HR departments are lazy. I just put the certification number from some guy's profile on LinkedIn. They will just see the numbers and tick the box. My blood ran cold. I kept scrolling. He had lied about his role in a major project at his last company, claiming to be the team lead when, according to his own messages, he had been a junior member who was almost fired for missing deadlines. He bragged to Alex about it. The hiring manager was super impressed with the Alpha project. I told him I managed the whole thing from conception to launch. You told me you mostly just ordered the pizza for the late-night sessions. Details. Details. It is all about how you sell the story. The worst part was the messages about me. 2 months before the move, right after I had agreed to go with him. Chloe is on board. The move is a go. She is really leaving her job and friends for you? That is serious. It is seriously convenient. No way I could organize all this packing and logistics while I am trying to network. She is a lifesaver. So you guys are going to love Austin, huh? I am gonna love Austin. I will probably give it a month or two, let her get everything set up and comfortable. Then I am cutting the cord. There is this girl Jessica who is starting in my department, already been chatting with her. She is more my speed, ambitious, knows the right people. That is cold, man. Chloe is a good person. Mark, she is luggage, bro. You need it to get where you are going, but you do not bring it to the party. Luggage, there was that word again. It was not a spur-of-the-moment insult. It was a plan. I was his unpaid moving service, his temporary homemaker. The entire last few months of our relationship had been a lie. A carefully constructed performance designed to get him what he wanted. I sat there for a long time, the glow of the screen illuminating my face. The grief was still there, but now it was accompanied by a white-hot rage. He had not just broken my heart. He had used me, exploited my love and trust in the most calculated way possible. He thought he had gotten away with it. He thought I was just a sad girl who would cry for a week and then crawl back home with her tail between her legs. He had no idea who he was dealing with. I did not just get angry. I got organized. I spent the next 2 hours meticulously taking screenshots of the entire conversation with Alex. I captured every lie about his qualifications, every brag about his deceit, and every single soul-crushing message about his plan for me. I made sure the timestamps were clearly visible on every single image. Then, I went to the Innovate Dynamics company website. It was easy to find the name of the executive team. Mark's new boss, the vice president of strategy, was a man named David Harrison. I found his corporate headshot. He had a kind, serious face. He looked like a man who would not appreciate being made a fool of. I created a new anonymous email address. something simple and untraceable. Then, I began to compose my message. I was not emotional, I was not vindictive, I was professional. The subject line was simple: important information regarding new hire Mark Peterson. The email itself was short and to the point. Dear Mr. Harrison, I am writing to you anonymously to share some information that I believe is critical to the integrity of your team. I have reason to believe that a new employee, Mark Peterson, secured his position at Innovate Dynamics through fraudulent means, including significant misrepresentations on his resume and during the interview process. I have attached a series of screenshots from a private conversation where Mr. Peterson details these fabrications, including a false claim of a PMP certification and a gross exaggeration of his role in past projects. He also discusses his unethical intentions in a way that I believe reflects poorly on his character and judgment. I trust that you will handle this information with the discretion it deserves. Sincerely, a concerned party. I attached the folder of screenshots, my finger hovering over the send button. This was it. This was not just revenge, it was a course correction. It was justice. I took a deep breath and clicked send. The days that followed were strange. A calm settled over me. Hitting send had not been a moment of triumphant joy, but one of quiet, resolute finality. The ball was no longer in my court. I spent the next few days methodically dismantling the home I had just built. I packed my own belongings, separating my life from the ghost of his. I contacted the landlord and, using a clause about relationship breakdowns in the lease, managed to negotiate an exit strategy. It would cost me, but it was a price I was willing to pay for my freedom. I did not want to run back home defeated. This city was not Mark's to own. I found a small, furnished apartment for a short-term lease in a different neighborhood, a place with no memories attached. I wanted to give this city a chance on my own terms. I moved out on a Tuesday, exactly 1 week after he had left. The apartment was empty again, echoing with the silence of my departure. I left his remaining things in a neat pile in the middle of the living room, along with the keys and a note that simply said, "I am done." I waited. For 2 days, I heard nothing. I started to wonder if the email had been ignored, caught in a spam filter, or dismissed as the ramblings of a bitter ex. I started to feel a flicker of doubt. Then, on Thursday afternoon, I got a text from a number I did not recognize. "Hey, this is Ben from Mark's team. Weird question, but do you know what is going on with him? He was called into a meeting with HR this afternoon, and then we saw security walk him out with a box. It was super weird." I stared at the message, a slow smile spreading across my face. It had worked. The foundation of his new life, the one built on lies, had just crumbled. The first call from Mark came an hour later. I was sitting in a coffee shop in my new neighborhood, sketching in my notebook, when his name flashed across my screen. I let it go to voicemail. I was not ready to hear his voice. The message he left was exactly what I expected. It was not an apology. It was a furious, rambling tirade. "Chloe, what did you do?" His voice was tight with rage. "I know it was you, you psycho. You ruined everything. My career is over. You are going to pay for this, I swear to you." I listened to it, feeling nothing but a distant sense of satisfaction. I deleted the message and blocked his number, but Mark was persistent. The next day, he called from a different number. I ignored it. He left another voicemail. This time, the anger was laced with panic. "Chloe, please pick up. We need to talk. They fired me. They said I violated the company's code of conduct. Jessica will not even talk to me. She blocked my number. How am I supposed to pay for the apartment? I cannot afford it on my own. You have to help me." The calls kept coming, each one more desperate than the last. The anger was gone, replaced by a pathetic, whining tone that I barely recognized. He was unraveling, and he was documenting the entire process on my voicemail. "I am sorry, okay?" he said in a message a few days later, his voice thick with what sounded like tears. "I am so sorry. What I said to you, I was an idiot. I was stressed. I did not mean it. You were not luggage, you were everything. I made a huge mistake. Please just call me back. I do not know what to do." He started calling every day, sometimes multiple times a day. He would leave long, pleading messages. He offered to pay me back for the moving expenses, for the deposit on the apartment. He told me he loved me, that he had been a fool, that he would do anything to get me back. But I never picked up. I was too busy. I had landed a big freelance project with a local design agency. I had made a friend, a girl named Maya, who worked at the coffee shop. We started exploring the city together, finding hiking trails and quirky little bookstores. I was discovering that Austin was a beautiful city when it was not tainted by his memory. About a month after it all happened, I was having dinner with Maya on the patio of a restaurant. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a call from an unknown number. I knew it was him. I looked at the screen, at the call from the man who had tried to reduce my worth to a piece of baggage. I silenced the call, put my phone face down on the table, and turned my attention back to my friend. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow over the city. My city. He had thought this was his new life, but he was wrong. It was mine. He was the one who had been left behind. I took a sip of my wine and smiled, a real, genuine smile. I was finally unpacked,